Welcome, everyone. Again, my name is Dania Guillen. I'm one of the counselors at Orange Coast College. You also have with us Jenny Hall, who will also be speaking to you guys, another counselor with OCC. We are recording this session so that it's available to you guys afterwards if you want to go back and kind of go over some of the slides and the information that you're going to be seeing or hearing this afternoon. Again, the intent and purpose is to find out more about the next step after you apply to OCC, once you complete the orientation, which is meeting with a counselor. So we're going to answer some basic questions, but also get into the nitty gritty of what types of classes and transfer versus not to some extent, and then open ourselves up for questions. So let's go ahead without further ado and get started. So the first question is, students often want to know, is there a deadline to apply to OCC? When is the last day to apply for fall? How do I know I'm going to get my classes on a timely manner for the fall semester? So priority registration is what allows our students to be able to register for fall semester courses on a timely manner. So it kind of bumps you up towards the front of the line, if you will, so that you secure the classes that you need for fall at the times that you need it. We know some of you may be working in the fall semester, may have other plans, so it may be equally or more important for you guys to secure certain classes. How do you get priority registration? How can I get that extra security? So the first step is obviously to apply to OCC. It's never too late. Really, it's just a matter of making sure that you apply in a timely manner so you give our college enough time to process your application. Usually it takes 3 to 5 business days to process an application once you have applied to OCC. Students must also complete the OCC online orientation, which I'll get into that in a minute. The orientation just gives students general information about OCC. And then after they have applied an orientation, they meet with a counselor to develop what we call a student education plan. The student education plan is where the counselor will ask the student a number of questions regarding your goals while at OCC. What is it that you want to do? Do you want to transfer? Do you want to work on one of our programs at OCC that don't require transfer? And based on the feedback we get from you, then we can lay out for you a series of courses that we recommend that you take. And guys, make sure that you mute yourself so that everybody else can make sure that they can hear. So let me go ahead and there we go. So why it matters. The earlier that you register, again, obviously, the earlier you get the classes that you need and at the times you want them. We have an example here for you. We have approximately 11 medical programs at OCC that are very popular by our students. The majority of them will require students to start with Allied Health 10. ALH 810 is a popular class. It gives an overall general overview of the programs. You get exposed to them, you get more information, you get to learn what are prerequisites to join the program. And officially, this is where students will officially apply to the medical program of their choice, whether it's ultrasound, diagnostic, which is diagnostic medical sonography, medical assisting, radiologic, any of those programs really require this class. My point is, if you get priority registration, then you're going to have a better likelihood of securing this class that fills up quickly, because it's really one of the classes you need to start right off with if you can in the fall semester. And there's other classes like that that fill up quickly. Let's see. So what did you have there, Jenny? The only class that's still open. Oh, okay. And then some of you may not.
This is linked to where the orientation is. Do you want to show them how to?
Yes, absolutely. If you want to go ahead and show these guys, when you log into your MyCoast account, if you have already applied to OCC, and you click on login, you're going to see this login screen.
Or
it's okay. You'll get in there. That's okay. So your MyCoast account, if you're not familiar with it yet, is kind of like your high school, almost Aries, if you will, if your high school uses Aries. It's essentially where students go to register for classes. It's where students go to pay any fees, how they get access to their student emails, how they get to see a transcript from OCC and the classes they've taken. So this is it. This is MyCoast. When you first log in, you're going to click on registration on the left-hand side. And once you click on registration in the middle column there, At the very bottom, it says online orientation, and in blueprint, Orange Coast College online orientation. If you have already applied to OCC for the summer fall term as a first-time college student, even if you're taking a class in high school this spring semester, you needed to have submitted an application for summer fall as a first-time college student. Once we process your application, you'll get an email that talks to you about these steps, and it's going to give you the links to connect you here so that you can complete the online orientation. Without the online orientation, students cannot get priority registration. It's not an orientation that's going to take 5 or 10 minutes. Make sure that you set aside ample time. Students have said it can take them 20 to 30 minutes, sometimes a little bit more, to go through the modules. And it is important to pay attention to the orientation. At the very end, you will be quizzed based on the information that they just presented. So you need to do well on the quiz to pass the orientation. So we just wanted to kind of show you where it is. So that's it, the OCC online orientation. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move on from this slide. Slide 3. Here we go. What is an education plan, and why does a student need one? All community colleges require students to obtain, or not require, encourage students to obtain a student education plan. It's essentially a map, an overview of all the classes that the student needs to take to complete their goals, whether that is to transfer out to UCLA, to transfer out to San Diego State, to complete one of our medical programs at OCC, to complete our oceanography certificate or associate degree, one of the many programs that we have at OCC. In order for you to know what classes you need to take so you don't make mistakes, you need to know from a counselor what are those classes that you need. It includes an overview of all the classes. An SEP can, as you can see, they help reduce the amount of time to help you finish your goal. Basically, what that means is you're not going to be wasting time taking classes you think you need. Quick example, I had a student years ago who was a business major. We didn't meet with a counselor for whatever reason his first year, and he started signing up for everything at the business and the class schedule only to find out he didn't need half of those classes. So we want to make sure that we help you. I mean, it was great. These were interesting classes, but that essentially kept him at OCC a little bit longer because he later found out he didn't need to take all of those classes. So we want to avoid mistakes, especially if you're in programs like financial aid. We want to make sure that you continue to be eligible for those programs and that you graduate and finish your goal in a timely manner so you can continue to keep up with programs like financial aid. It also helps you kind of get a general idea of time. How long do I see myself at OCC, especially if you have other commitments outside of school like work, because we can talk to you about how many classes we recommend you take if you plan to work part-time, full-time, for example. SEPs can help you avoid common mistakes, especially if you're that student that's currently taking or has taken a college course at another community college. Sometimes students forget, then they come to OCC and they accidentally repeat the same courses they took somewhere else because our course numbers are not the same. And so we want to make sure that you don't accidentally repeat a course, or maybe you have an AP exam for psychology, you forgot that you had a 3, and then you go and sign up for psychology 100 at OCC, which is the same thing. You just made a mistake. It can be also helpful to help you see visually a timeline of how long it'll take you to complete a goal, and we'll show you that a little later. And because we will set up for you semester by semester your classes and the sequences that they need to be taken in, so you can see how many semesters before you're done. And then finally, there are some programs that some of you might be enrolled in or will be enrolling in, like Pirate Promise, EOPS, financial aid. There's a few others, but just to name a few, some of these programs require a student to have an education plan on file because they want to make sure that you know what you're doing, that you're not wasting your time and money on classes you don't need. So if you're going to keep up with the requirements of those programs to remain eligible, you still need an SEP. So hopefully that makes sense. We're going to move on to slide number 4.
I know largely I was going to keep the questions until the end, but this question is exactly related to what you're saying.
Oh,
it's a
good
question. Vivian asked, can the SEP change? So if you make an SEP for a student when they come in, is it possible that the requirements would change? And also, what if they change their major?
Very good question. So yes, more times than none, when we meet with a counselor with a student for the first time, let's say right now we're starting to already meet with seniors. that are planning to join us in the summer or fall after they graduate high school. More times than none, your goals will change. Students can come in and say initially, I'm really interested in psychology as a major, and then after taking a psychology class or two, 1 or 2 semesters down the road, they may recognize that that's not really what they want to study. Maybe they'd rather go to a different major. So yes, the SEP will change provided your plans change. So either the student no longer wants to pursue the same educational goal, or they're now looking at a different transfer school, or the schools they were looking at for transfer suddenly have additional requirements for your majors. So it could be a number of reasons why it is going to change, which is why we have to encourage you and remind you time and again, when you meet with the counselor in the spring semester, it cannot be our final meeting. We have to continue meeting with you guys every semester at least once, so that we can keep you up to date to make sure that you're on track, that nothing's changed, especially if you're transferring, that you still only are required to take the classes we discussed, and to make sure that you're doing well and that you're kept informed every time you meet with us of other programs that you might not be aware of. So yes, your SEP will change, which is why we need to meet with you every semester, ideally at least once. Keep in mind the counselors do not reach out to the students. It's the students that need to reach out to the counselors and have to remember to schedule those counseling appointments. I will point out lastly before this is that you don't have an assigned counselor. So unlike high school, we don't put you with a specific counselor that you have to continue to meet with. Our students can pick any counselor they'd like unless they belong to a specific program like EOPS or Disabled Student Services, where students could be assigned a counselor because they have membership in those programs. But otherwise, good question, Vivian. Yes, SEPs can change, and hopefully you can see why. So Jenny, go ahead, take it away.
Okay, obtaining an SEP. So how do I get one? Technically, you guys can get one right now if you want to. We've had a few of you come through already, and so we are accepting, appointment reservations from our new applicants already. You can do that at this time through our website. So if you just go to the counseling homepage, and we'll be looking at some of these things later in the presentation. You can book a telephone, a Zoom, or a Cranium Cafe appointment, which means you're talking to a counselor over video chat, kind of like this, or over the phone. However, some new opportunities are going to open up starting March 19th, which is right around the corner. So on March 19th, everybody who's applied so far to the college will receive an email that will have a link in it. And it's a link inviting you to a Canvas shell. We call it the New Student Workshop. And it's for all of our new applicants. And it's how you can begin your first SEP. We ask that everybody visit the Canvas shell and complete the intake form that shows up. Just a lot of questions asking you, where you're coming from, a little bit about what you did in high school, what your goals are, like what are you interested in doing, and then you have the option at the end of it to tell us if you would prefer to have a counselor just read all the information you gave us and create an SEP and send you an email notification like, hey, it's done, or if you want to meet with one of us for 30 minutes and actually talk about it. So you can see here, your first step for everybody is just to visit that Canvas shell anytime after March 19th. Complete that intake form. After completing the intake form, you can decide, I just want a counselor, just do this for me and email me. And if I get something over email and I still have questions, I'll follow up with a counselor later. Or you can select, I'd like to talk to somebody about my plans. I have more questions, or maybe I have additional services that I'm looking for. Maybe I'm in high school and I utilize a 504 plan or an IEP, and I really need to talk to somebody about how to set that up at OCC. Or I'm really interested in certain programs on campus and I don't know enough about them yet. So you meet with a counselor in person, and then the counselor will meet with you over Zoom or telephone. So these options are all for you. And keep in mind that even if you do the online version where we email you, you can always follow up if you still have questions. So nobody's, you're not like permanently, locked out of coming to see a counselor. You want to do this sooner rather than later, because if you wait too long, it takes about a week to process these online ones in particular, because we have to have counselors go in and read all your responses and put the SEP together and send you an email. So from the time you complete it till the time you hear back from the counselor could be the next day, or it could be 1 week. So we want to make sure that you take care of that before registration begins so that you get that priority registration date. If you wait too long, if it's like June and you're doing that, you know, you've kind of missed that window. So we do encourage you, you don't have to do it on March 19th, but I would encourage you to try and get it done by the beginning of May. If you really want to get that online one, you know, get credit for that. So Dania touched a little bit on this, but just to add to this, because those were good points that aren't necessarily here, is that, you know, Dania said a few minutes ago, she said, you don't have an assigned counselor. So that's one of the main differences here. But what are some other differences you can expect with your counseling experience in college? First of all, in high school, your counselors do a lot of the selection and the scheduling for you. So your counselor's kind of saying, hey, you need these classes, and the school just tells you, we put you in this class with this teacher at this time, here's your schedule. In college, it doesn't work that way. Counselors actually cannot schedule you at all, nor can we change your schedule for you. I think that's the hardest thing for students to get used to the first semester. Your first semester, you're getting used to the whole system, and sometimes you make a choice that you end up regretting. You don't like the time of the class that you selected, you don't like the teacher. And so we get a lot of first year students will come to us and say, it's not working out with this professor, can you put me in another section of English 100 or something like that? And no counselor can do that for you. So you are responsible for signing up for the class. You're responsible for dropping the class if you're not going to attend it anymore. You are responsible for reaching out to other teachers if you want to be added to a different class. So that's your responsibility, and we can't make that happen. Counselors cannot force a teacher to move you into their class or anything like that. What we do is we tell you, here's what we think you should do, you know, so we recommend these classes, and that's what Dania was telling you about, you know, and, you know, we can help you, and we can help you find open sections. We can say, hey, here's the schedule, and look at, here's these ones you can try, but you're the one that has to reach out and try and make that happen. Your counselors in high school tend to be checking on your progress behind the scenes all the time. It's part of what they do. Versus in college, we're really checking on your progress if you come and see us. So somebody's not looking up your account every semester to see what classes you signed up for and then giving you a phone call if you made a mistake. What we're doing is, if you make the time to come in and see us, then we're going to look at what you signed up for and give you some advice. So it really takes some initiative on your part. You have to make sure that you make that interaction happen, because otherwise you might make a mistake that doesn't get caught until the next time you come in to see a counselor. We will reach out to you if you're really struggling. So if we notice like your GPA has dipped below a 2.0, or you're dropping like half or more of your classes, that's like a big red flag for the whole school. So at that point, we're going to reach out just like in high school and say, hey, what's going on? How can we help you like succeed? And how can we help you get back on track? But by that point, the damage is kind of done. Like now we have to fix that. So that's why we ask you to make the effort to come in and see us before it gets to that point that we're coming and saying, hey, we noticed this. And finally, in high school, your parents are a bigger part of the process. So in fact, sometimes the school may reach out to a parent before they reach out to you, given, you know, whatever the circumstance may be, and they're inviting your parent into that conversation. In college, it's really, you know, you're an adult to us. And so this conversation is with you. And actually, unless you provide some special formal consent, and there's actually a form that you fill out, there are many things we simply just can't discuss with your parents. So, you know, you may be happy to find out that, you know, your parents can't just call and get your grades or things like that. That all has to be done through you and your permission. So for the most part, you know, conversations with you. But we know that a lot of students like to include their parents in their planning. And if you want to bring your parent to your appointment and you're okay with your parent being a part of it, that's great. Bring them. You know, we're happy to have them there. But we really want you to work on being the one who's speaking, the one who's asking the questions, the one who's taking the notes. So it's okay if your parents there. That's great that they're involved. But we want to make sure that you're in charge of the appointment and that we're hearing from you, because all these things are really about your future.
And so really quick.
Oh, go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. We have had maybe 3 questions consecutively. I think
okay.
Kind of the same on your previous slide. So I just want to remind them, this is regarding the slide before this one. I think everybody got excited about the SCP intake form and they're anxious to jump on that. And how do we get that intake form? Can I fill it out now? So a couple of things to remind you. As Jenny pointed out, if you have already applied to OCC, if you have already received an email from OCC that says we processed your application and we've given you your student ID number and your login information to your MyCoast account, if you made it at least that far, this is a good time for you to book an appointment now. Don't wait for this online March 13th or March 19th intake form. And the reason I tell you this is because there's ample appointments right now to speak to Jenny, myself, or another counselor. So if you made it as far as I already finished my application, I need to now jump in to speak to a counselor, you have the option to do it now. Ideally, we would rather speak to you now. This March 19th online SCP is for a student who hasn't had a chance to meet with the counselor for whatever reason. Maybe they applied late to OCC. And so now we're giving you the opportunity to go online, answer some questions that we normally would ask you if we were on the phone with you or in person. We would have you go online, ask you those same questions, and then once the students fill out the intake form, you have the option to say, great, send me the education plan, email it to me, I want to look at it, or you have the option to say, I have way too many questions, I think I'd rather book an appointment. The reason we created this online format, keep in mind that as you wait longer to complete these steps, our semester at OCC ends in May. If you're going to hold off to speak to someone until March, May, you're going to notice that appointments are going to book very quickly if you want to speak to a counselor. Jenny and I will not have the same availability to speak to you the way we have right now. And so this is why we created the opportunity for students to get their education plans online so they can get it and they can get priority registration. That's the whole purpose of that. Right now is the time. Finally, I know at least one of the students asking the question about the online SCP already has an SCP. So if you have already met with the counselor, this is not for you. You've already completed that step. So I know a lot of you guys have a ton of questions, but I really want you to understand a lot of the slides that are in here are so important. I don't want you to get so caught up with your questions that you're not listening to the rest of the slides because you're going to miss a lot of good information. So I'm going to go ahead and let Jenny continue, and I'm going to then answer questions at the end. Either you guys can unmute yourselves at the end, but just give us a chance to finish these slides because a lot of the questions you guys have are embedded in the slides. Just hang on. So go ahead, Jenny, take it away. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad. These are good questions, though. It's so better than when we get nothing. Thank you. Okay. So how do you prepare for your counseling appointment? Like Dania said, you know, you guys can come now. You don't have to wait till March 19th to do this. And whenever it is that you do your first counseling appointment, it helps if you bring a couple things along with you. Having access to a high school transcript is useful. Particularly so we can take a look at your foreign language experience, whether, you know, what kind of grades you may have in that, as well as your math classes, you know, last math class taken, grades in that kind of thing. We're also interested in any AP exams you may have taken. So if you took AP exams or you're planning to take AP exams, we want to know which ones. If you have scores from last year, we would like to know the scores. So if you have access to that, that'd be great. And finally, some of you are doing dual enrollment college coursework. So you're actually going to have college courses, you know, on transcripts already, and we would like to know about that as well. All of this is so that we can make sure that we don't accidentally have you duplicate some class you don't need to take, you know, give you the proper placement that you should have for, you know, what you've experienced in high school. So eventually some of these records, we may also need you to submit an official form to OCC. So keep in mind when you just sort of talk to a counselor and report it during a counseling appointment, that's not the same as officially submitting an AP exam score. If we're going to give you credit for that AP psych exam that Dania mentioned earlier, we need the official score. But in the meanwhile, just knowing about it helps us give good course recommendations. So eventually formal transcripts, formal exam scores would be useful, as well as if you have a transcript from somewhere that's not in our district, not Golden West or OCC, a Coastline, but a different school. So also you have to think about a few things before you come, because we're going to ask some questions. You do not have to have answers to all of them. but it helps if you've at least considered them, so that you can tell us where you're at with some of these things. First of all, we're going to ask right away, are you thinking about transferring? Do you want to finish at OCC and then you want to join the workforce? Or are you hoping to go from here to another school? The natural progression from that is, oh, if you want to go to another school, where do you want to go? We understand you may not know, that's okay, but we will ask. And we may even say, generally speaking, do you know if you're looking at, say, Cal State universities or UCs or both? Do you know if you're looking out of state or at a private school? Again, it's okay if you don't know, but it helps if you know, like, I will only go to a Cal State or I will only go to a UC. Like, it helps to know that, because that can make a difference in our planning. If you're not interested in transfer, is there a specific career or a major program that interests you? So we can help find a match. What is it that you want to do? Let's find the program that will get you there. And finally, what other commitments will you have while you're going to school? So definitely, if you're going to be working a job, even if you don't have the job right now, but you know you're going to have one next fall, we want to know about how many hours you're going to work at that job. Do you have any other really time-consuming obligations? Do you help with childcare? Do you, volunteer somewhere? Anything like that, where it's like, this is a regular commitment I have, and it would affect when I take my classes. So kind of come in with an idea of what you would say regarding those things. And last of all, what if you're just totally undecided? So you saw all those questions and your heart stopped and you were like, I can't answer most of those. I really don't know. I'm totally undecided. Here are some things that you can do now. You don't have to wait to see us to do this. One is, I encourage you to visit our Career Center website. So here's a link to it, and I'm just going to show you a couple things on it. It's so extensive, we can't look at everything, but it really is a nice website. And so we go here and scroll down. There's this Discover Your Path area that I really like. You can actually take career assessments online. Now that you have a student ID number, you can actually have access to that. As well as some of these job shadow things where you can find out about different careers. There are videos, interviews with people, things like that. Further questions, reflection questions to help you get thinking. Even a list of classes we offer at OCC that help you figure out your path. So we have counselors who teach classes that help you navigate this whole thing if you need more time to figure it out. Sometimes students at first are like, I don't know if I want to take that. It's not a GE class. It's not necessary. But I always think you save a lot of time by taking it in the end. The students who do this in the beginning, they have a better idea of what they want, and they don't change their minds as frequently as they move forward. So I think something, especially like Counseling 104, is very helpful. So that's something that we have there. If we go back to that Discover Your Path area, you can explore different career paths. And I like that part of the website as well. So if you click on here, this what can I do with this major is really fun. So it's a website where you can actually put in a major, and it tells you like different, because people will ask you that, women's studies, what are you going to do with that major? So it kind of talks about like, well, yeah, there are jobs that you can get that are related, and you can use it for that. So feel free to, there's a lot in here to go through and see all of the different resources we have for just exploring. The other thing that I want to show you, close that, is our OCC catalog. And so in the catalog, you can actually look at, there are a couple things that are interesting. We've got all of our programs, and I'm going to click on that in a sec. We also have these pathways, career and academic pathways. And so here, when I open it, there are 11 pathways, and these are kind of like umbrella topics. And then there's majors housed underneath them. And what they have in common is that the coursework for those majors is kind of similar. So we kind of put them together so like, oh, a lot of these ones use similar courses. So if I click on like hospitality, food, and tourism, I can see like, okay, here are some programs of study at OCC related to that. Or I could go back and say careers in healthcare, what can I do? Here are some things we have at OCC. And then if you click on programs, look at, it tells you if we have a certificate or a degree, you can, all the details about these, and you can even go further on and see a specific program. You can also just if you want to see a long list of different majors, here you go, alphabetize everything we have at OCC. So you can see all of these different majors and programs. If you're interested in something like I want to study dance, I can click on that. And then when I click on requirements, it shows me in the catalog the major classes for that, so that I can see here are some of the things that a dance student would take. Notice that, you know, sometimes you're just selecting one class from a list. You're not doing necessarily everything that you see. And then it even explains some of the other requirements for that degree. So I'm not going to go too far in the weeds on that, but this is just a fun way for you just to see what does it look like to study these things. If you want to transfer, you can really transfer for just about any major, just about anywhere that accepts transfer students. So it doesn't really matter whether or not your major shows up in our list. What we'll do is we'll tell you the transfer requirements of the school you want to go to, and we just go that way. So these are you know, two things that I think are very, very useful: the Career Center website and the OCC catalog. All right, so now Denya is going to explain to you how to find your SEP after we make it.
Yes, so I'm posting a couple of links on the website for the Career Center, the catalog, steps to apply to OCC for those of you that haven't started or have started, but you're not sure what the next step is. And then I just posted the career education brochure that shows you specifically the programs we offer at OCC, some that may not require students to transfer to a 4-year and can still finish in a timely manner and move on to find employment. So I've posted that for you, keep that in mind. So your education plan. Once you have applied to OCC and we process your application, again, you will receive an email from the Coast District or OCC that gives you your login information. This is to My Coast. This is your portal that'll show you how to log in, your username and password. So once you get to that step, you'll go ahead and log in. And once you log into your My Coast account, the next step should look pretty familiar. We saw this already once. So this is where students go to, again, take care of all of their business regarding to college. This is where they go to register, drop classes, look at their SEP plans, and so much more. But I'm going to focus specifically on the link on the left that says Degree Works, right underneath financial aid. Students will click on Degree Works. It'll take them to this next screen. For the purposes of this example, we kind of deleted the student that we're looking at, so you can't identify the person, but there will be a student ID number that your name will appear. And then whatever degree you're pursuing at OCC or whichever campus you've applied to within the Coast District will appear on the far right. So it'll say for this student, they're pursuing an Associate of Science for transfer in math. You're going to click on the upper left-hand corner of the screen in tiny white print. It says plan. So whether you meet with us over the phone or Zoom, or you wait till March 19th to answer those online questions in that intake form and have Jenny and I create it for you, whichever method you choose, you'll be able to click on plans. And this is an example of a student's plan. So this is an older student. And what you're looking at are 2 semesters. This student wanted to take a class in the summer. This is for 2018, but this is just to give you an example. This student signed up for Counseling 104, which is a highly recommended class for incoming freshmen. Counseling 104 is career planning. This is great for someone that either has no clue what they want to do, or maybe has some ideas but still needs assistance. That would be Counseling 104. So this student wanted to get a jump start. They wanted to start in the summer. And then the fall courses are laid out under OCC FA 2018. This student is looking at possibly 9 units, where it says credits, by the way. You're gonna hear the term units. We use the term units over credits. This student is signing up typically for a typical schedule, which is English 100, Film 100, Communications 110. And then once we figure out where the student is placed for math, then we would encourage him to also add the math class. So this is an example, by the way, of what we call an abbreviated SEP. When you hear that, abbreviated means we did not tell the student everything they need to finish at OCC. One reason is time. We're meeting you for the first time and we're not going to overwhelm you any more than you're already feeling. Another reason, most of you don't know. So if you know that you want to maybe transfer, but you don't know where and you don't know what you want to study, we can't tell you what classes you need for the future until you have more information for us. So abbreviated is simply giving you 1 semester or 2 semesters to get an idea of what classes you need to register for. At some point, we would have met with the student maybe after meeting number 3 or meeting number 4. Hopefully that student came back to us and said, I know what I want to do, Ms. Deanna, I'm transferring to Irvine and I'm looking at business. and I'm possibly considering Cal State Fullerton too for business. Once you are at that point where you know exactly the direction you want to go, then we create a comprehensive plan. And all that means to you is literally we will show you semester by semester all the classes you need to take until you're done. So that would be comprehensive. But this is exactly where you would get to see that. So what is the next step? I've already met with the counselor, either through Zoom, phone, or by filling out the questionnaire, the intake form after March 19th online. And they've already showed me what classes I need to take. Now what do I need to do? As Jenny pointed out, you need to register. So we don't register you. We simply highlight the classes we recommend you take based on what you're telling us you want to do. So step number one, again, would have been to apply to OCC. Ideally, guys, someone asked us in the chat box, do I need to complete the online orientation first? Ideally, yes, because there will be certain information in the online orientation that will be a little bit more helpful by the time you get to the SEP appointment. You'll know a little bit more information. You won't be as lost and confused, we hope, if you really paid attention to that online orientation. So you want to take it step by step. And then the education plan after the online orientation. The other thing is we don't want you to forget. If you skip that step, oftentimes students do, and they come and they meet with us, and then they forget to go back and complete the orientation, and they're not eligible for priority registration. So we don't want you to forget either. So the next step is to register. As you can see, we do not register you. Students register themselves. You can go online, and in a minute, we're going to show you how. You can go online to your MyCoast account to check your registration appointment date. I can tell you that all students will get a registration appointment date for summer, whether you want to start as early as summer or fall. You'll still get a date, and it's up to you if you want to start in the summer or not. I can tell you that this month, if you have already applied to OCC for summer, fall, this month, students can start checking their MyCoast account for a registration date for summer. Their students typically are allowed to register between April and May for summer if they want to start with us that early. So we'll show you in a minute, where do I check that date? The same thing, how do I know when I can finally register for fall? I don't want to come in the summer, but I do want to come in the fall. How soon can I register? We'll show you that in a minute. Again, this main criteria here is that you complete steps 1, 2, 3, in a timely manner before June. I can't say this enough. And honestly, I would say by May, to be honest with you, for you to have priority registration. If you're gonna wait to take care of these steps until June, Jenny and I cannot promise that you will have priority registration. We'll guarantee you some classes, but unlikely the more popular ones that will still be available if you wait that long. So please do not wait. There is no specific deadline other than get this done as soon as possible, no later than May. We will have assistance for students who don't know how to register. So currently, if you are planning to meet us or start with us in the summer, I have given you the link there. I don't know if I can post it or Jenny can post it on the chat box, but there is a link for you to sign up and be able to get, that's okay. The link that she has there is for students that are going to start OCC in the summer. So if you're going to start with us in the summer and you want step-by-step of how do I register, I already met with Jenny. Jenny recommended a great class for me, that Counseling 104, a film class in the summer. But how do I register? How does that work? You can sign up to, or you can click on that link that Jenny's going to post for you in a minute, and you can RSVP. Is it too early? Possibly. Nobody's clear to register yet for summer. Probably something you can try it, but if not, maybe hold off until maybe next month, April or May, to sign up. And it's going to be via Zoom, and someone's going to walk you through the steps of how to register for summer. For fall registration, we want you guys to go on this link called Stay the Course. If you want to show them, Jenny, what the website looks like. Stay the Course is a link that houses all kinds of information. The first thing you're going to see at the top when you click on it is information on how to register, assistance with registration. Maybe you know how to register, but you're having a problem with the class you want to add, and you don't know what's going on, or you're getting an error message. So the first thing you see is information through our virtual front desk of how to register, or if you have problems with registration. Beyond that, at the bottom, we have given you links for information on how to see a counselor, tutoring, maybe how, if you click on counseling, this shows you how to make an appointment, the different options you currently have. You can meet with a counselor by phone or Zoom. If you click on that, it takes you to this next page, which if you have not applied to OCC, you're not going to be able to book that counseling appointment that's currently open for next week. A ton of them that are open for next week because you don't have an ID number yet. But if you have applied to OCC and you have a student ID number, you could already book an appointment. Jenny and I are both part of Cranium, which is what she clicked on. Cranium is similar to Zoom, but I believe, Jenny, correct me if I'm wrong, students have, and there I am, there's Jenny, there's myself, there's our contact information, you see other counselors there. But it's housed under, I think, Canvas, is that correct? Or they have to go through Canvas to log into Cranium?
I think so,
yeah. So it's very similar to Zoom. You can ask, Jenny and I do both phone or Zoom, you just need a camera, or Cranium. Cranium is, again, very similar to what we're doing here right now. We get to see you. The biggest difference, I think, with Cranium is students can go in there as soon as appointments are loaded for next week. We load appointments every Thursday as early as 8 a.m. So this morning, students had a chance to log in. And when you go through this option that Jenny's showing you, Cranium, you can log in and see our schedules for next week. And if you already know the counselor you want to meet with, you can see if Jenny's available. You could see if I'm available, or Ruby or Steve or any of the other counselors, and you can look at their schedules and book it yourself. So it makes it easier, I think, to book the appointment. And it has an extra layer of protection and security with this that Zoom doesn't have. So it's very unlikely that someone will crash our meeting, because students can't log in to Cranium unless they're a student and they have to go through Canvas. So it has multiple layers of security. So that's Cranium. So again, that link that we had showed you also gives information about other programs on OCC that you may want to take a look at. And I think Jenny might have already posted the link. So I don't want to take too much of your time on that. On your own after this, maybe check it out. So I'm now at the point where I met with Jenny. Jenny was awesome. She gave me an SCP net for March 19th or March 8th, because she's open March 8th to meet with students. And she's explained it. I have my schedule. Now she says I have to register. So can I register as soon as I meet with Jenny as early as next week? No, because no one is clear to register for fall until June if you have priority registration. So you kind of have to hang tight. You have to find, first of all, you have to figure out how soon you can register, and we're going to show you that in a minute. But on this screen, what you're seeing is one arrow is pointing to registration. That is where you're going to go when you're ready to register, when we have cleared you. The other one is pointing to view my eligibility. So how do I know if I have priority registration, and how do I know when to register you? 2 and 1 in this screen. So this particular student that we're looking at, you see a bunch of green check marks. Orientation complete, they completed that online orientation. Student education plan, they've already met with Jenny, complete. That student already has an education plan. And all the others, don't worry about. Essentially what the two things are for you to deal with, what you want to look at in your own screens is, have I been cleared for orientation, and have I been cleared for my education plan if you know you took care of those. And it'll tell you eligible if you did. And then below on the screen highlighted is the registration appointment date. So for this particular student example, you can see that this student was cleared. We're using an example of a student that is taking classes this spring. So you can see that they were cleared for spring. This student could have registered as early as last year, October 27th at 1 p.m. to take classes right now this spring. You're going to get something similar. When you get your registration appointment date for fall, it's going to say something like, I don't know, June 15th at 8 a.m. That means you cannot register until that day and time. Am I on this one, Jenny, still?
I think it's me.
Okay, go ahead.
So Daniel just showed you everything you need to do in order to register, but sometimes when you can get in there to register, particularly if you don't do it as early as you could, you're going to find out that some of your classes are full. Or maybe there are a lot of sections, but the exact one that you wanted, the perfect time, the perfect professor, it might be full. So this slide is just letting you know what to do in that case. So the best thing to avoid this scenario entirely is to register as soon as you can. Make sure you have priority registration, check the date ahead of time. As soon as you're eligible, go ahead and register, don't put it off. If you go to your SEP that your counselor built and you realize you can't get into one of the classes that the counselor put on there, maybe they really recommended that you take, you know, Comm Studies 100, but when you look, they're all full or waitlisted, then you're going to want to find a replacement for that class. So if you log into DegreeWorks, which was the account that we showed you in your portal where you find your SEP, the same place where you find your SEP, Dania showed you when she went in there that on the first page, the worksheet screen, it has information about your program. And when you scroll down, you're going to see that there's a list of requirements you need to meet. So if you're completing some kind of associate degree at OCC or some sort of transfer general education pattern, you're going to see a list of all the classes that you need to do for that. So you can look under that worksheet tab and you can look for different classes to replace the one that's not going to work. So maybe I had Music 139, History of Rock on my plan. Sounded interesting. I'm not a music major, but I need an arts class. It's full. So I can go to the arts section in DegreeWorks and I can see all the other eligible arts classes that I could choose instead. So that's one of the things that I can do there. I can also honestly go in the OCC catalog and all the GE patterns are posted in there too. So I could look at my GE pattern in the OCC catalog to see what are some alternative classes I could choose. You can always speak with a counselor. So if you feel really kind of nervous about this, you don't trust yourself to do it correctly, we have drop-in counseling available. So you are welcome to go into a Cranium Cafe to see if a drop-in counselor has a green status light and they're ready to chat with you, or you can actually call in to our counseling line and be put in a queue where a counselor calls you back. And this is just a quick 10-minute conversation. So they're not going to make a whole new educational plan for you, but they can help you with this kind of thing. Like, oh no, that class is full. Let's find something else that works. So that's another option that you have. And then, you know, the main thing to remember is that in order to register, or, you know, if something doesn't go quite right when you register, you don't need to hold off on all of your classes to get that one question answered. So, oh no, there's a problem with this one chemistry class, but the rest of them are okay. Go ahead and get into the ones that you can, because every day that you wait, those sections are filling up and you're losing the opportunities for those classes as well. Even if for some reason you don't have a plan in place and your registration time comes, we would encourage you to pick a few things, you know, that sound initially useful and then double check with us on them. We just don't want students to just wait and say, the reason I didn't register for anything was that I couldn't talk to a counselor yet. So we really want you to make sure that you do what you can. And we really encourage you to take sections that are open. Please, please, please don't make a schedule where you're waitlisted in all your classes. Even though you maybe like all those times better, when students do that, we can't guarantee you're going to get off the wait list and into the class. So it's really best when you have so many options as a freshman to just take classes that are actually open and available. If you really want that professor, take it another semester. You know, if it's full, do it when you can really get into it. But please try and actually get into the classes that are open. Okay. So how will your first semester of college be different from high school? There are some differences. We talked about how the counseling services are going to be different. Kind of what we do as counselors is different. Another thing is that your classes in high school are a lot of times 2 semesters long. So maybe you take an English class and you take it first and second semester. We don't have 2 semester long classes in college. So they're all 1 semester. A semester for us at OCC is 16 weeks long. There are even some classes that are only half a semester, so they go twice as fast. So you may have a class that's only the first 8 weeks or the second 8 weeks. Those aren't as common, but they're out there. So the content is going to come more quickly because sometimes an entire year of high school curriculum or even more is covered in 16 weeks in college. That means that attendance is really important. If you miss 1 day of a college class, you're missing a lot more than you would in a typical high school class, because that college class meets a fraction of the amount of time that a high school class would meet. In high school, you see your teachers every day, Monday through Friday. In college, you're only going to see your teachers occasionally. If you take a class that's completely online, you may not be seeing the professor, but you might be interacting with them on the internet. If you take a class that's live online in the fall, then that's more like this over Zoom. And they do expect to see you. They do take attendance, you know, all that kind of thing. So, you know, because you don't see your professors every day of the week, again, it's really important that you're there when class is happening, because you miss a lot if you miss 1 out of the 2 days that it meets during the week. Classes are shorter in high school, so you'll have to get used to having, you know, being able to focus for a longer period of time in college on the classes. So our classes are usually 90 minutes and sometimes up to 4 hours at a time, depending on how frequently they meet. So a class that meets only once a week is going to meet for several hours. So, you know, that's going to be kind of a shift for you, just kind of managing that time. More guided instruction happens, I think, in high school. You get a little more time. Sometimes even in class, your teacher may provide time to work on an assignment that's going to be due. That's typically not going to happen in college. The instructor doesn't see you as often, so they need to get as much as they can done in the classroom, and they expect you to do everything else on your own. So a lot of times you're not going to have work time in college. Additionally, in high school, I found, I used to teach in high school, and I found that when I taught in high school, I gave points for a lot more things than I do when I teach in college. So there were just, so every little activity, every little assignment, every little thing, you got points, you got an award for doing. And you're going to find with some professors in college, they may assign homework and never give you points for it, but if you don't do the homework, you're not going to do well on the test. So it's really this like independent drive that you have to have in college to make sure that you really do well in those classes and you do the work, even if you don't get a reward for it every time. Attendance is mandatory in high school, and they're going to check up on it. In college, we don't, as a school, check on your attendance. Like OCC is not tracking your attendance, but your professors are. And in high school, if you miss a bunch of classes or you're not doing your work, your teacher just kind of has to deal with it. But in college, they don't. So if you're not attending your classes or you're not doing any of the work, a college instructor can drop you from the class. They don't have to ask for your permission necessarily. They can just say you're not meeting the requirements of this class that are outlined in the syllabus, and so they can remove you from it. And remember, you can't have a counselor put you back in. So it's really important that you do attend the classes and do the work.
And Jenny, we have about 4 minutes.
Okay.
This is going to go till 1.
Okay. For finishing your academic goal, this is a very common question that we get. And just to kind of summarize this, I would just say, you know, it depends what your goal is. How long is it going to take me to do this? Well, it depends what your goal is. Keep in mind that transfer for certain majors may take longer. You know, so if you change your mind, that can take time, and we have to kind of start over with certain things. If you have to repeat classes or you don't want to take summer classes, all those things can increase the time. No one will be able to tell you the first time you show up in their office how long it will take you to complete your goal, because we have to see how things are going. But after you get a semester or 2 under your belt and we kind of have a better idea of how things are shaping up, that's when that comprehensive plan Danielle mentioned comes into play. And Danielle, I'll give this is our last slide.
Okay, so I know some of you have asked where do I find the counseling page to book an appointment? I have my screen up. I'll show you that in a minute, but for now, really quick, things to think about as you start your first semester. You took care of all the steps. Make sure that you are activate and you're checking your student email account from OCC like you are your high school. Anybody trying to reach you is going to be emailing you there, financial aid, counseling, enrollment services, any program you enroll in. So please make sure you make it a point to check your OCC email periodically. Make sure that you pay your fees on time. If you're that student that hasn't applied to financial aid, or you just applied to financial aid, please make sure that you know through that program, are you eligible? What are you eligible for? Just to make sure that you don't get a fee. And then one common mistake that students make is they assume, well, I'm gonna get financial aid, so I'm not gonna pay attention to those emails. I'm not gonna pay those registration fees. And then they are frantically calling counseling going, what happened to my classes? Why was I dropped? The college doesn't know what your plans are. So you need to make sure that you're talking to someone to make sure that if you don't think you owe us anything, that is really the case. If not, talk to someone, because we can drop you from your classes if you don't take care of that. So please make sure that you're attending other sessions, or that you have like financial aid, Pirate Promise, so you know what are other options that you have, because we do hold you to those fees. Generally, they have to be paid the first week. So this is a good time for you to start thinking about what do you have in progress for that. Purchase your textbooks ahead of time. You don't have to purchase them. You can also rent them. And certainly we can always do a follow-up. We always will have more workshops for students. Usually we have another workshop a week before school starts where we cover this in detail. So watch for that. Canvas is what we use. This is very familiar for those of you that are already taking classes with us, but if you haven't, Canvas is what houses, this is what students use to take their classes, especially right now that we're online, but that is essentially where you go to look up information, to look up modules, handouts, anything that has to do with your class. There is a video tutorial that you can look at. If you need assistance, you don't have a Wi-Fi, you're not going to be able to, because you're leaving high school, Stay the Course, the link we shared with you earlier, talks to you about how you can potentially borrow one from the school. And then just know when is the last day to drop a class. Talk to counseling if you're not sure. Look at the class schedule. If there's a class you register for that's too overwhelming, it's not going to work for you, talk to someone early, because there are deadlines that you have to meet if you're not going to keep the course. And biggest thing there is make an appointment to see a counselor every semester at least once. We need to speak to you again in the fall, not just now in the spring. The fall is when we follow up with you to see what classes you actually registered for, and then we start talking about classes for next year's spring. That appointment is great to book September or October. And I can share the screen, or Jenny, you can share the screen. And
somebody
you can
asked
see
how to navigate to Stay the Course from the home page.
Sure.
So here it is.
So if you're on the home page, orangecoastcollege.edu, if you want to look at how to stay the course, just scroll down the screen like Jenny's doing, and there it is. Click on Stay the Course. So you're going to see that pirate ship, and that is where you can get assistance with registration. You can get connected to the counseling page and other programs that we offer at OCC. I'm going to go ahead and quickly upload a handout because I don't know what workshops you guys have attended. So I'm uploading the Pirate Promise program. This is for someone who's interested in getting free tuition. If you don't apply to something, we're going to charge you $46 per unit for every class you take. Most classes are worth at least 3 units. It adds up. So we want to make sure that you're either on financial aid or Pirate Promise. Again, I don't know if you made that session. So there's the flyer that talks to you about Pirate Promise. Somebody asked if we're going to have this presentation available on the Canvas, Discover OCC. Yes, we are, correct? Yes. So you will, that's why it's being recorded. So you will be able to go back to Canvas and see it. The other question is how to get to the counseling page. So if you, because a couple of you said, I'm ready to meet with a counselor. So you can do it through Stay the Course. You would click on counseling, and then you click on either phone or cranium. Whatever you choose to click on, I don't know if you want to click on cranium, for example, or phone, it takes you directly there. Now, the only thing is if you are trying to reach the counseling center, then you just click on, and Jenny just clicked on cranium. So does it show you how to just the home page for the counseling center from there? Contact information, I think, maybe. Okay. So this is, well, the only thing here is they're going to go directly to the counselors. So you can see where it says, if you go to the counseling homepage, the way Jenny is loading, you can see our phone number to the counseling center. So usually you call the counseling center and our staff will assist you. So that is the best way if you need to reach a counselor and you need assistance with how to make an appointment. But there it is, how to make an appointment again. Cranium, you can see my name, you can see Jenny's name under Cranium Cafe. If you want to book it, we're part of Cranium. If you would rather do Zoom or phone only, you can go on the other left-hand side. But on Cranium, I know there's some of us that do phone. I think all of us also do phone if you prefer phone. So if you are that student that already applied, You already have a student ID number. You're ready to meet with a counselor. We have a ton of open appointments. There's no point for you to wait till March 19th. You need to start meeting with us now. It's going to be better because you get one of us like this, just you and me, or Jenny and you, or another counselor, and we start cranking your education plan. We start interacting with you and answering questions. So again, apply, orientation, get an appointment. If you're going to hold off and delay these steps for whatever reason, then you, after March 19th, have the option to do the online questionnaire or online intake form, in which at some point within a week or so, Jenny and I will review your questions. We will create an education plan, email you to tell you we finished it, go on your degree works, look at your plan, and then just register when you're ready. Any questions? I want to open it up for you guys. Some of you said you're able to hang tight a little longer, and I'm available for questions a little longer. So does anybody want to unmute and ask a question that hasn't been covered? You're more than welcome to unmute. If you're shy, you can use the chat box. Otherwise, I hope this was helpful. I think the main point here is you need to start booking your appointments. We want to make sure that you book them. If you haven't had a chance to apply to financial aid, or you're still holding off on filling out that financial aid, please don't hold off. Even if you pass the March 2nd deadline now, technically, get that financial aid going, because as soon as you register, we give you so much time to pay. And financial aid is a process. It takes time for them to process your application. So don't start filling out financial aid in June. Whatever you do, get it done. Get help through your school. Get help through OCC. If you get familiar with our website, you will see the financial aid. Through Stay the Course, it'll link you to financial aid. If you want to talk to someone, maybe you have questions and you're not getting assistance at your high school, our financial aid office will talk to you. They'll help you. So make sure you get that going. Pirate Promise, that's a separate form. That's a separate application. It requires you to apply to financial aid. As soon as you apply to financial aid, it's super easy to fill out the application for the Pirate Promise program. The link is in the flyer. It's super easy. If you don't get any financial aid, then Pirate Promise can pay your tuition for up to 2 years until we run out of money. So that would be another way to kind of help you waive some of the fees, so you don't have to worry about finances, because that can delay how your goals of transferring or finishing if you're having to work in order to pay for school.